have to turn around in order to save their Senate majority and at least not get clobbered in the House is exactly what President Obama is saying. They have to reverse the structural dynamics of voter turnout, which are in play before anyone ever spends a dime on a campaign ad. And those dynamics would still be in play were there suddenly no campaign ads at all. Yes, at base level, it is a dollar-for-dollar contest, but Democrats are trying to do a qualitatively different thing than the Republicans are right now. Republicans are trying to excite their voters who are most likely to turn out. But where the Democratic numbers matter the most are not the ones that come paying for TV ads. They're the ones that tell you how many of your voters showed up because you knocked on their door at the right time and got them to the polls. Joining us now is John Stanton, Washington Bureau Chief for BuzzFeed. Mr. Stanton, thank you for being here.
It's good to be here.
They can't match them ad for ad. That's never going to happen, right?
No, that's not possible.
Do the Democrats conceivably have a smart enough idea and a well-financed enough idea about turnout that they can mitigate some of the problem costs for them in terms of the differential they're facing in the ad wars?
They do. I think, they're doing two things right now that I think are smart on the message side. They're talking a lot about income inequality and trying to deal with that, which is, I think, helping motivate some young voters and some women voters. And some of this attacking the Koch brothers, if they could make them the boogeyman, that could certainly help them. But I think that unless they can tap into the Obama campaign's ground game and how they were able to pull people out, where they were able to go into, for instance, black barbershops and to have the barbers become captains, and they made sure that that one guy that didn't vote in 2008, he came out and voted in 2012. If they can find a way to do that, then they could have a fighting chance. But right now, the way things are, it's going to be very difficult for them to maintain the size of their majority, and it's going to be a tough fight to keep it at all.
In terms of who's working on this stuff, you see the Republicans really start, because the Republicans, I think, know they're going to have a good year, or they think they are, they're really starting to crow about Reince Priebus and what he's put in place and what the NRCC has put in place. And you add that to what we know the Koch brothers have paid for, which is a very expensive organization that's been around for months already. They feel both confident enough to be bragging about that. So we're getting sort of a window into who's doing that work on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, is it the smart kids who are working on this stuff, or is it the leftover folks who didn't get in on the presidential year?
No, I think they've got some very smart people over there. There has been some concern that a lot of the Obama folks in like Jim Messina's shop, for instance, have started to pivot towards 2016 and are looking at Hillary and are not really playing very hard. And Hillary and her people, I think, are a little concerned about this notion, but it doesn't look like they're really throwing their weight, frankly, into 2014. And so there is a smaller bench. No doubt about it. But they do have some very, very smart people over there. And, again, it is pretty early still yet, so things could change dramatically. I think, if they get away from some of the foreign policy issues, they get back to the domestic, they could sort of climb back up out of this a little bit.
It is interesting for President Obama to be making this tactics case. He keeps going to these Democratic fundraisers and these sort of friendly audiences and kind of giving people a hard time and saying, you know what, we're going to get killed here. 2014 is going to be terrible for us. Everything is stacked against us unless we wake up. He's using really blunt language. He's kind of giving it to Democratic donors and saying, you're not doing this right. Does he... I haven't seen him do that before, except in campaigning for himself. Is it likely to make a difference? Are you seeing it resonate in Washington with the kind of people who have to get off their wallets in order to make it work?
A bit. It is, certainly. Yeah. I think, the in the House and the DSCC have done very, very well with their fundraising. I think this is about him, though. He doesn't just care about keeping the Senate and trying to take the House. He cares about those things because he's got 2 years left in power. And he understands that if he goes into those last 2 years and he has a Republican Senate and a Republican House, he's done, essentially. And even if he has a very narrow Senate control, he probably can't get anything serious passed. And I think he now is very much motivated by self-interest, frankly, and that is when he's at his best in putting the screws to some of the money people. I think that's what you're seeing with him.
If Democrats cannot figure out a way to run a national campaign against the John Boehner Congress, like to make the John Boehner Congress a problem for every Republican congressman in the country, then they'll be Democrats. John Stanton, BuzzFeed's Washington Bureau Chief. John, thanks for being here.
It's good to be here.
Thanks. All right, coming up.